Just in time. The time got away from me a little bit there. It's Friday, the 29th of September, exploring scripture number 50, contradiction number 3, Judas Iscariot. How did he die? Let's take a look. Coming up next. Okay, well, gotta wipe the sleep out of my eyes and get ready for the show. I noticed I've got a little bit extra light coming in this window. Let me see if I can adjust that a little bit better. That's not much better. I still got a really weird glow. Anyway, it is what it is. It's 8:30. It's time for the show. Let's do the show. So we wanted to talk a little bit today about another contradiction. If you recall, Judas Iscariot betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver and handed him over to the chief priests to be dealt with, to put it mildly. And so, one account says he was distraught and threw the 30 pieces of silver back into the temple and went out and hanged himself. And then another account says he went out and bought a field with the 30 pieces of silver and fell headlong and his intestines spilled out. So, with some coffee, gotta have coffee. It's funny, is I've been up since 2 because I went to bed early last night, and you'd still think I would get in here on time, but no, it didn't happen. But oh well, that's the way it is. So let's look at the 2 accounts, shall we? Let's switch over to the Logos installation, and we will look at, let's scroll up just a little bit. I highlighted it in red, but let's scroll up to verse 3 in Matthew 27. When Judas, who had betrayed him being Jesus, saw that Jesus was being condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and to the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They replied, that's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Is this the Temple of Solomon? Is that what we're going to look at? Oh, we got a reference here. Let's see what Luke 1:9 says. That's not related at all. I don't know why that's there. Anyway, then he went away and hanged himself. Let's see what this one says. Acts 1:18. Oh, that's the other reference. So in this account in Matthew, and by the way, this is the only gospel that had an account of what happened to Judas. I looked, or at least it's the only one I found this morning. I thought it was in another of the gospels, but apparently not, which is strange. But the only other account that I could find was actually over in the book of Acts. And this was written by Luke, the physician. He says, with payment he received for his wickedness, Judas bought a field. There he fell headlong, his body burst open, and all his intestines spilled out. Everyone in Jerusalem heard about this, so they called the field in their language. What's the K? See John 5:2. Akeldama, that is field of blood. Let's see if I even pronounced that correctly. Even close? Am I close?
Hakeldamach.
Hakeldamach. That sounds Klingon almost. Ooh, I hope I didn't offend anybody with that remark. Looking at the reference here, let's see. No, I don't see anything there that's relevant, so I don't know why that reference is there. But anyway, in their language, maybe was there another reference to language? Aramaic. Ah, okay. Okay. So it's field of blood. So did he? How did it go? Did he throw the 30 pieces of silver back in the temple and go hang himself? Or did he buy a field and go and spill his innards all over the place? Well, offhand, on the surface of it, it sounds pretty contradictory. So how do we reconcile the two? We have 2 different accounts from 2 different people, Matthew and Luke. Luke was the author of the book of Acts. That that have very different accounts. Or are they different? Let's look back at the beginning of Acts. Let me just start reading here in chapter 1, verse 1. In my former book, Theophilus, I wrote about all that Jesus began to do and teach. Well, I really wish we had that book. Well, we do, the book of Luke probably, right? Until the day he was taken up to heaven after giving instructions through the Holy Spirit to the apostles he had chosen. After suffering, he presented himself to them and gave many convincing proofs that he was alive. He appeared to them, and over a period of 40 days, it spoke about the kingdom of God on one occasion. Let me get down to the part that I'm interested in here. Well, I don't see it. I don't see it. Anyway, what am I looking for? I was looking for where Luke says he did all kinds of research. Let me look for that in a search. In the New Testament NIV, can I narrow that even further? Luke and Acts. No, I don't see it. No, I don't see it. Well, anyway, I thought it said that he did a bunch of research. I think it does somewhere, but it's escaping me at the moment. So anyway, so he wrote the book of Luke, which was the Gospel of Luke, one of the 3 synoptic Gospels, which are Gospels that are meant to prove evidence for Jesus. So he wrote this book, and then he wrote to this guy named Theophilus, who, I don't know, he was a ruler or a teacher. Let's see who Theophilus was. Let's look up Theophilus. A person in the book of Luke and Acts are addressed, since Theophilus, oh, you know what? It may have been in Luke that he wrote that. Luke, chapter 1. Yes, this is what I was thinking of. I knew it was in here. Luke chapter 1. Many have undertaken to draw up an account of things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. With this in mind, since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, I too decided to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know with the certainty of the things you have been taught. See, I thought that was in the book of Acts, but it's actually in the book of Luke. So he writes to Theophilus. Let's see, it's translated as lover of God. Theophilus is a title rather than a proper name, and it designates the general audience of the books. However, the use of such generic titles is contrary to ordinary New Testament practice. Further, the adjective most excellent generally designates an individual. Though Theophilus, Paul refers to Festus as the most excellent, and just as Claudius Lysias and Tertullius addressed Felix, though Theophilus may well have been someone noble standing, it is difficult to speculate what his position might have been. So Theophilus is somebody of some faith, right? And so Luke wrote 2 books to him. And so anyway, getting back to where I was before, it says, with the payment he received from his wickedness. Now, this has got an I in it, and that's Matthew 26. That's probably going to be where he threw the money into the temple. Matthew 26, the one of the 12, called Judas, one of the chief priests, and said, what are you willing to give me? Yeah, okay. So that's the deal he made to turn Jesus over. So, interestingly enough, when we go back and look at Acts, let's see if we can get back to Acts. No, can we get back to Acts this way? I mean, Luke. Nope, cannot. So let's go here. And let's look at Luke 1. Okay, so he phrases things very peculiarly. I can't say that word. Peculiar. Is that right? Why am I having trouble with English today? Many have undertaken to drop an account of things, but he says, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of the Lord. So this implication is that some of the accounts were handed down. So maybe there was something in a bit of a telephone game where somebody told so-and-so, who told so-and-so, who told so-and-so, who finally told Luke. With this in mind, since I myself have carefully investigated, he investigated everything from the beginning. You wouldn't investigate if you knew everything from the beginning. So he investigated. I too decided to write an orderly account. And okay, so then in the book of Acts, see if we can get back there, he says, with payment he received from his wickedness, Judas bought a field. There he fell headlong. What is J? Oh, that's the same account, 27, 3 through 10. Yep, okay. Just bouncing back and forth here a little bit. His body burst open and all his intestines spilled out. Oh, Emily's joined. Hi, Em. And so could it be that Luke, trying to be as faithful to scriptures as he could be, and to the evidence that he had seen and the accounts that he had been given, that there was a bit of a handoff problem? Well, that's one possibility. Oh, I know why my shirt is looking silly, because I'm wearing a green shirt. That's why you can see the Bible through me. Look at that. I'm kind of translucent. That's really weird. I forgot I was not supposed to wear a green shirt. So you can actually see the Bible. Where am I? Over here, over here. You can see it through me. Ha! I'm wearing a green shirt. Green screen, green shirt. That's why. Sorry about that. Didn't even occur to me. But anyway, that is neither here nor there. So the first hypothesis is that Jesus, or that Luke had misunderstood or hadn't witnessed it himself, because in fact Mark doesn't mention it and John doesn't mention it, and Luke in his book doesn't mention it. Only Matthew mentions what happened. So that's one possibility, right? So he heard it from Matthew, or second or third hand from Matthew, and just got it wrong. Well, you know, that's excusable, isn't it, to some degree, right? We all hear things and misunderstand them, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. It's just humans, right? We're human. That's one possibility, but I have another possibility that I like even more. And that possibility is that he probably went out and bought a field, likely not with the money. I mean, I don't know what a field goes for, but it's probably more than 30 pieces of silver. I could be wrong about that. I don't know how much 30 pieces of silver is actually worth and how much a field is worth. So that would have probably been useful to know. But it doesn't say how big the field is, so it's probably going to be a red herring to chase anyway. So he probably bought a field with his own money, probably, and hung himself. Well, if you've ever seen, and I don't mean to be graphic here, but when someone dies, bacteria tends to start breaking down, and the natural decomposition begins to happen. And it used to be in practice that when you hang yourself, really the only way to get down is for somebody to cut you down. And so what if someone came along and cut the rope that Judas had hanged himself from, and he fell head first, and when he hit the ground, because he was rather bloated from decomposition, he ruptured. Is that a possibility? It seems to fit the facts better, and I like that one better. It would be pretty unusual to have that level of detail, especially from Luke, who is a physician, who would know and key in on that sort of thing, it would be pretty hard to misunderstand that bit. So it makes more sense that he did go out and hang himself, as Matthew says, but he'd been there for a few days, probably. It doesn't say anywhere. Emily says, I've also heard that when people would throw themselves onto their own sword, it would be calling hanging themselves on their sword. I haven't researched it, though, so take it with a grain of salt. I've heard something similar with hanging from a spear, but I don't know. That's, again, not something I'm too ultimately familiar with. But if he did hang himself, literally, with a rope, and he hung there for a couple of days or a few days, and then he was cut down, and when his body hit the ground, he ruptured. That would account for Luke, the physician's account for his intestines spilling out. I mean, I don't know of anybody that, unless you fall from a great height, that your intestines would fall out. I mean, I could see you banging your head on a rock and killing yourself if you fell off a horse or something like that. But he would have had to have fallen some distance in order for his intestines to spill out. He was probably hung fairly high, and so that he would fall head first, sort of tumble in the air. I don't know how high, but we don't know how high the tree was. But that's the account that seems to give the best fit for all of the people that have given an account that he actually did hang himself. Now, the only thing that's not super clear is, did he throw the money in the temple or did he buy a field with it? Luke says he bought a field with it, but Matthew says he threw it in the temple. I would say, of the facts, where the money went and what actually happened to Luke's body, the only piece that doesn't quite fit perfectly is what happened to the money. And I already don't think that 30 pieces of silver is the price of a field. That's just my opinion. I don't base that on anything, but we don't know what the value of silver was back then. It was far more prevalent than gold, right, as it is now. I do know that the Greeks used silver a lot because silver is very plentiful in Greece, or it was in those days. It may be depleted now, I don't know, but they plated everything, made everything out of silver in Greece, and so it was probably a common metal. Copper today would be considered common, or tin. So 30 pieces of silver probably was not worth a great deal. Let me see. Let's go back and look at that 30 pieces of silver. Where is it? Let's see. Where did that go? 30 pieces of silver. 30 pieces of silver. F. What does that say? Matthew 26. Oh, this is where they're willing. He's making the deal. Oops, I'm scrolling. Sorry. So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. So we don't know how much that's worth. Here's U. What is U? Exodus 21:32. This is referencing 30 pieces of silver. If a bull gores a male or female slave, the owner must pay 30 shekels of silver. Is a shekel and a piece of silver the same weight? 12 ounces of silver, about 345 grams. How much is let's see, 12 ounces of silver going for 12 ounces of silver price value. It says today's price at the current price of silver. Let's see, per ounce is about $17 an ounce. So we do the math. 17 times 30 is 17 times 30 is $510. That's back in the Old Testament days. If it was a shekel, what does T tell us? Oh, there's just more references. Let's go back to that other Zechariah reference. Nope, gotta go back further. Again, nope. There we were. Right? Nope. There we go. That's what I wanted. Zechariah 11:12. I told them, if you think it best to give me my pay, but if you do not keep it, they paid me 30 pieces of silver. What's the context here? Then I took off my staff and called favor and broke it, and revoking the covenant I made with all the nations. It was revoked on that day, and so the oppressed of the flock were watching me, knew it was the word of the Lord. So I told them, if you think it best to give me my pay, who is he? Come on, show me. Zechariah the prophet is talking to a merchant. If you think it best, give me my pay, but if not, keep me. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, the handsome price which they valued me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw it to the potter in the house of the Lord. Okay, all right. So 30 pieces of silver turns out to be about $510 if you round up. So $500. Can you buy a field for $500? It seems pretty cheap. $500 today probably wouldn't buy you much of a field. So I doubt now that oops, I've lost my verse in Acts now. Where did it go? Let me go back to my notes. Acts. With payment he received for his wickedness, Judas bought a field. So I doubt, personally, if a field went for $500, today's value. You can't buy a field for $500 today. I don't know what an acre of land goes for, and it varies from area to area, but it seems pretty unlikely that it was 30 pieces for the field. So I would say that part is probably questionable. He probably bought it with his own money, and Luke just got that part wrong. So that's just my opinion, though. What do you think? Or do you have any thoughts on the matter? Well, it seems to me that the two verses are pretty joinable. The two accounts, if you consider Judas having fallen and having spilled his guts after he was cut down, after he hung himself. I don't know what the tradition was for how long they would leave people up on being hung, but I would imagine it's probably a good possibility for a couple of days at least. And so that's my assessment. That's how I put the two together. I don't consider it a contradiction so much as I consider it maybe that the 30 pieces of silver, what actually happened to it, is a little bit in question. So that's what I'm going to leave you with. You tell me what you think. Call me up. There's the numbers. There's the digits. It's all right there. It's been there for a long time. Oh, my shirt is really translucent. You can see the sun through my shirt. That's funny. Don't wear a green shirt, Scott. I always forget. Okay, anyway, so 30 pieces of silver, that's what I want to know. What do you think happened to it? Did it go into the temple? Probably, because it's kind of symbolic of what Zechariah did with the potter's money, right? And so I would say figure that part out. And if you figure that part out, let me know, because I would like to add to my understanding as well. So that's what I have. I hope that was helpful. I hope that kind of at least took the edge off the seeming contradiction. Let me know what you think. Feedback at discipleslife.tv. Okay? That's all I got for today. Short and sweet. Well, it was about 30 minutes. Took a little bit longer than I thought. But there you have it. What do you think? I always want to hear. Call me up. Let me know. All right. That's it. Talk to you guys later. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.